It's here. It's here. Season 2 of Wistoria, Wand and Sword is finally here. This season mainly tells the story of the male lead Will Serfort and his companions after ascending to the tower. At that time, Elfaria, the female lead, will also meet with Will Serfort. At the same time, the world building of this anime will expand once again. To give you a better viewing experience, let's recap some plot points from the end of Season 1. After the male lead and his party finally managed to defeat the evil Duke boss, unexpectedly, a swarm of evil sentinels suddenly appeared. Fortunately, the Wand of the Light Emperor, who is at the peak of combat power, had appeared, and the male lead also learned about the existence of the Light Clan. Now moving on to the plot of Wand and Sword Season 2. As 6th-year students, even though the exams haven't completely ended, a piece of news has already spread among the teachers. The male lead scored 100 in all subjects. This is a score that even Lihana couldn't achieve, yet it was accomplished by someone who cannot use magic. But even so, Edward still did not acknowledge him. Shifting to the other side, the male lead's total score has reached 7,199 points, while the minimum score required to ascend the tower is 7,200 points. The final exam is tomorrow. Although it seems like a sure thing, the male lead still hasn't slackened his efforts, as his roommate Rosti felt sympathetic toward him and plucked a white hair from his head while talking. Seeing this, Colette slammed the desk, stood up, and asked Rosti what he was doing. However, Rosti claimed he usually does this and asked, "Could it be that you want to help him pluck it too, Colette?" Meanwhile, after the incident with the evil Duke, although Julius and Sion still bicker daily as usual, both of them understand that their relationship has softened. At the same time, Wignall and Lihana have also undergone qualitative changes due to the male lead's presence. Night fell. Since the male lead had been studying without eating or drinking, Colette brought dinner over, only to find that he had already fallen asleep. She then covered him with an outfit. Just as she was about to leave, a bold idea sprouted in her mind. She was about to kiss him, but Rosti arrived at that very moment. Then, Colette's tone changed as she expressed deep sympathy for the protagonist because he always gets himself covered in injuries. At the same time, Colette also dislikes the Supreme Five Wands. If the Ice Princess hadn't cast a spell on the protagonist, causing him to constantly chase after her shadow, he wouldn't have to suffer so much. Furthermore, the Ice Princess doesn't have to do anything. She just waits for him at the top of the tower. Therefore, Colette feels this is too unfair. Hearing this, Rosti looked toward the window, indicating that he thought so too. Meanwhile, at the top of the tower, the adjutant of the Ice faction noticed something unusual and asked Elfaria what was wrong. Elfaria said it was nothing, but just as she finished speaking, the fairy wand began mocking her, saying they didn't expect the embodiment of laziness to actually come out for a walk. Facing the mockery, Elfaria directly brought up the magic duel, suspecting the other party was acting sarcastic just because they lost. Right at that moment, the Thunderlord wand also walked over. The reason everyone had to gather here is that the barrier protecting everyone is rapidly disappearing, requiring them to cast the barrier again. Meanwhile, inside the teacher's hall, Edward was sitting upright in his chair, clearly plotting something. The next day, as the exam was about to begin, unexpected things were bound to happen. This exam was administered by Edward, and it was also the final exam for all students. He brazenly declared that there was only one question in this exam, to have all students explain what magic is. Although it seemed like a normal question, everyone in the protagonist's group knew that for a male lead who cannot use magic, this was completely unsolvable. Just as the male lead was completely clueless, the promise he made with Elfaria years ago surfaced in his mind. Thus, he wrote down his true thoughts. To him, magic is longing. Afterward, Werkner kicked open the door and questioned Edward about why he set such a question. However, Edward pushed him away and snapped back, asking how they could expect someone who can't use magic to enter the tower, stating that in this world of magic, a sword simply cannot become a wand. And so, under Edward's targeting, the male lead score ultimately stayed at 7,199, just 1 point short of passing. At the same time, the male lead sat in the park feeling dejected. Soon, Rosti walked over and told him his goggles had been fixed, but the male lead's tears burst out. Beyond his anger at Edward, he felt immense guilt toward Elfaria. On the other side, Colette was frantically searching for the protagonist, but after asking around, everyone said they hadn't seen him. Right then, Werkner spotted them and calmly told them to leave it to him, as today was the last day of the year, and he urged everyone to attend the Boundary Festival, which is equivalent to celebrating the new year. It is said that long ago, people had never seen the sky. This world was sealed in darkness, and the land was frequently destroyed by invaders from the sky. It was at that moment that 5 great mages sealed the sky and repelled the invaders. However, the barrier is only valid for 1 year, so a new great barrier is cast on the last day of every year. Although the atmosphere at the venue was very cheerful, everyone in the main group, without exception, was thinking about the male lead. After the ground squad inspected the surroundings and found no anomalies, the ritual to reshape the boundary was about to begin. However, just as everyone was immersed in the New Year's joy, a series of strange runes suddenly appeared on the surface of the Great Barrier. Immediately after, numerous evil sentinels emerged from within. The man releases flame magic just as usual, which should have been a large-scale attack that wipes out everything, but at this moment, it has no effect at all. Refusing to accept it, he fires another shot, little knowing that he would regret it in the very next second. It isn't until now that everyone realizes the monster before them is not something they can handle. The so-called high-level mages are like mere grass to this monster. Fortunately, Sarah in the sky notices that it's not that magic is useless against it, but rather that the opponent is nullifying the magic. At the same time, the principal watching from afar notices this issue as well. She suspects that the mage killer brought by Finn back then has now been fully mass-produced. After pondering for a moment, the principal finally realizes a serious problem. The monsters in the central capital are actually just a feint, and their true target is the tower. At this time, the Supreme Five Wands at the top of the tower notice this as well, because after deploying the Great Barrier, their magic power decreases significantly, making this the only day in the year when the Supreme Five Wands are collectively weakened. Although everyone suggests sending reinforcements immediately, only the strongest, the Light Emperor, knows that if any wand is absent and causes the Great Barrier to fail, invaders from above will come swarming in. When that happens, not only the central capital of magic, but the entire world will be turned to ash. To avoid this, the Light Emperor forbids the Supreme Five Wands from joining the fight. Meanwhile, the instigators of the incident also realize that the Supreme Five Wands won't show up. Though a bit disappointed, they are still eager to enjoy the hellish scene unfolding before them. However, an unexpected thing happens under these circumstances. Our male protagonist, who cannot use magic, plays a key role instead, but he is also afraid, having lost the goggles given by his companion, and because this monster is far too strong. Just then, Rosti reminds the protagonist to attack the monsters equipped with weapons. As long as these monsters don't have weapons, the mages can handle them. Watching the protagonist fight, the search officer Iris realizes a problem. Although the protagonist is here as a warrior, the number of enemies is simply too great. Fortunately, speak of the devil, the Light Emperor contacts Iris and transfers authority to her, dispatching the dwarf race to suppress the monster's rampage. She immediately issues the order to unseal the chariot, completely lifting the battle ban on the dwarves, urging the mages to stand united with the people of the earth against the common enemy. Although some dwarves look down on mages, they still decide to step in and help to save the protagonist. Meanwhile, Edward is constantly directing those around him on the battlefield. Lihana, the top student of her year, quickly discovers that when the enemy deflects magic, its movements freeze for a split second. In other words, as long as they continuously unleash magic, they can pin these monsters in place. Thus, she quickly devises a plan. She then commands everyone to cast magic to stall for time, paving the way for Colette's highlight moment. Seeing the performance of these geniuses, the high-rank mage of the tower feels deeply relieved. Seeing this scene, the instigators of the incident begin to feel annoyed. They didn't expect that despite planning so meticulously, the mages would react so quickly. With no choice left, they have to unleash their trump card ahead of time. A door appears right in front of the protagonist, and unexpectedly, it knocks him flying in a single encounter. The protagonist feels that this entity is even stronger than the Grand Duke of Evil. Sarah also recognizes that it is a special variant from the 40th floor. It is said that among the past Supreme Five Wands, several were killed by that monster. Just to stuff this monster into the portal, they sacrificed 50 of their comrades. So no matter which side you look at it from, this is a terrifying existence. The male protagonist here is locked in a desperate struggle. Even if he dodges a head-on attack, he gets blown away like a sheet of paper. At this moment, he realizes that all he can do is run. But at times like this, there are always a few dead weights holding him back. Fortunately, Mr. Donnan arrived just in time. In the next second, dozens of dwarves completely surrounded the monster. Iris also gave orders to the others to concentrate their forces near the protagonist in the south. Although everyone has surrounded the mage killer, this played right into the enemy's hands. A dark orb rises from within the monster's body, and a massive amount of surrounding magia begins to gather. Even the previously defeated monsters are starting to get absorbed. The experienced Edward immediately realizes that everyone has been walked into a trap. The special ability of the King of Assassins is to absorb the monster's magia. In other words, it can devour its own kind. Seeing this, the dwarves charge right up. However, dark magic rains down from the sky, instantly knocking out Mr. Donnan and his group. And after the monster devours the dark orb, its form undergoes a dramatic transformation. Faced with such a powerful monster, the protagonist can only think of that one move deep within the labyrinth. Rosti, connected to him in mind and spirit, rushes over as well. He begins casting magic toward the protagonist, wanting to turn the sword in the protagonist's hand into a magic sword. Unfortunately, this magic is intercepted and blocked by the enemy. In the next second, the monster appears beside Rosti and cuts off his arm with a single slash. After being injured, Rosti tells Kiki to go to Colette, while he stays behind to protect the protagonist. His eyes are filled with sorrow and determination. He had already resolved himself a long time ago. At this moment, the protagonist also realizes, no matter how hard he tries, he can't beat this opponent. No matter how cool-headed his strategy is, it doesn't work. Knowledge, wisdom, swordsmanship, emotions. In the face of brutal, unyielding reality, they are all useless. He finally resigns to his fate. Just as the monster prepares to deliver the final blow, Rosti stepped in between and took the hit himself. Just because he witnessed his best friend's tragic death, and even his teacher, who was always so gentle to him, had their chest pierced at this very moment. Right in the midst of this extreme grief and agony, he, who was always considered unable to use magic, finally found the source of magic, magic that belongs solely to him. The next second, his hair turned into white hair, a symbol of supreme strength, and his entire body was enveloped in silver energy. This is what is known as Silver Awakening. In just an instant, he broke through the air at lightning speed. No one could even see what it was. Only a flash of silver light passed by, and the monsters before them were annihilated. Not a single monster could stop his advance. In just a brief moment, he almost circled the entire central capital. Even when facing Vander, the special variant who had once beaten him senseless, he now has the confidence to defeat it. However, not long before this, the male protagonist was in a completely different state. Having witnessed Rosti's tragic death, which happened just to protect him, his mind almost completely collapsed. Just as he was sent flying, Professor Werkner caught him while riding a wyvern. Although deeply unwilling, Werkner did not look back, because Rosti was already dead. At this time, someone at the top of the tower could no longer sit still. He is Zio, the Wand of Lightning. Zio declared that there isn't a single useful person among them. They can only cry their eyes out and die miserably by the roadside. But what's most hopeless is that this group of high wands can only watch the people below go to their deaths in vain. However, he was stopped by another person. The Wand of Flame, Cariot, stated that if any one of them falls, the barrier will disappear. Once that happens, the invaders in the sky will turn this world into ashes. Moreover, facing such an opponent, they would struggle as well, so at the very least, they must wait until their magic power recovers. Yet Zio turned a deaf ear, even directly stating that they might as well throw away useless titles like these. Just as Zio was about to leave, a magical arrow struck right in front of him. The tension between the two high wands instantly became razor sharp. Meanwhile, the Wand of Fairies chose to remain silent. In her eyes, this was merely a nation of mages and had nothing to do with the fairies. Elfaria, who had been watching from the sidelines for a long time, finally took action. She walked up to the Light Emperor and said sternly, "Please revoke the order. This is a complete waste of time." The surrounding air instantly turned freezing cold because Elfaria was truly furious. "I am going to save my most important people. To save Will. If anyone gets in my way, I'll beat you up in two." At the same time, Werkner was fleeing with the male lead. Things had developed to a point where even the dwarves could hardly contain the situation anymore. In Werkner's eyes, their last hope was the protagonist. However, at this moment, the protagonist's spirit had already shattered. He felt he couldn't protect anything, couldn't save anything, and couldn't accomplish a thing, just like when Elfaria was taken away back then. Just as Werkner tried to comfort him, that mysterious person appeared right ahead. Sensing a smell far more troublesome than the dwarves on the protagonist, he prepared to intercept and kill Werkner and the protagonist. Meanwhile, Colette, fighting on the front lines, also noticed the protagonist's familiar, Kiki. Kiki looked toward a speck of dust in the sky, and Colette immediately understood, having Kiki lead her to find the protagonist. Seeing this, Scion decided to follow as well. At this moment, the headless man stood alone on top of a building, watching the battle. Although he also wanted to participate, his main task this time was command. He then cast dark magic, firing a black sphere. Vander was guided by this magic and charged straight toward the tower. When Sarah tried to step in to stop it, dark magic suddenly surged around her. Seeing this, Edward immediately ordered the surrounding dwarves to go to the central city, insisting they must destroy the mage killer held by Vander at all costs. But the dwarves were unwilling, as it was clearly asking them to go to their deaths. Unexpectedly, Edward admitted it outright. "To protect this city, to protect the children, go to your deaths, dwarves!" Just when everyone thought Edward had gone mad, another monster suddenly emerged. But the one who stepped up to protect the dwarves was Edward once again. His reason for doing so was simple. The enemy forces possessed magic-immune entities. Under these circumstances, he believed his own life was less valuable than the dwarves' fighting power. To preserve the dwarves' strength, he was willing to sacrifice his own life to protect the city. Hearing him say this, the dwarves naturally all gathered toward the center. It was time to fight for their lives. At this time, a messenger informed Werkner that the western front of the central city had collapsed, and the high-ranking mages in the northeast were defeated. The battle situation had become extremely dire. Although the dwarves joining the fight effectively reduced the number of mage killers, it still couldn't stop the enemy. Iris kept calling for reinforcements using magic, but every battlefield was struggling to hold on, and no extra forces could be spared. If this continued, the tower would surely fall. Just as Iris was feeling hopeless, she heard a powerful impact. The newcomer was none other than the mysterious youth, Finn. He pulled out the protagonist's sword and asked where the sword was now. At this time, the culprit behind the event stood suspended in midair. Though his right arm was injured, he was extraordinarily happy. That's because compared to him, Werkner's injuries were truly fatal. The protagonist struggled to raise his head, looking at the scene before him in disbelief. At this moment, Werkner's body had been pierced through, and he clearly wasn't going to make it. On the verge of death, he uttered his final words to the protagonist. begging him to save the central capital because only he could do it. However, the protagonist couldn't believe it at all. Not only did Werkner die because of him, but so did Rosti. Seeing this scene, Werkner collapses into the male lead's arms, indicating that he had actually been deceiving the male lead all along. He can use magic that brings hope to everyone, a one-of-a-kind magic. However, regrettably, Werkner breathes his last before finishing his sentence. No matter how the male lead shakes him or cries out, he can no longer get the final answer. Just at this moment, Finn's voice rings out. He states that Werkner will be fine. As long as his heart starts beating again, he can be revived. He explains that magic isn't just about controlling elements like wind and fire, but rather the obsession deep within a person's heart, which can also be called willpower. To release it, one must turn the lie into reality. However, to the male lead, these words sound like nothing more than a bedtime story to fool children, but Finn immediately denies this. How can someone who cannot change themselves talk about overturning the world? Isn't this the exact truth that swords seek in this world? Next, Finn drips a drop of his own blood onto the sword. Instantly, a surge of silver energy converges upon it. Finn continues, "You already have the answer in your heart. Shout out the name of the magic residing in your heart. Let your magic be born into this world." And at this moment, the male lead achieves complete enlightenment. He names his magic Courage. Now, with a head of full silver hair and enveloped in silver energy, this is what is known as Silver Unleashed. No one can clearly see the male lead's movement. Everyone only sees a flash of silver light, and the monsters in front of them are instantly annihilated. Meanwhile, Sion's completely exhausted, yet he continues to fight to the end. Because if it were that guy, the male lead, he would definitely never run away. He's clearly a cowardly guy, yet braver than anyone else. The moment the ice sword fell into the male protagonist's hands, his long-sealed magic power was finally unleashed. The two who had been separated for a long time could now fight side by side once again. Just as the male protagonist released his silver power, Colette and Sion almost failed to recognize him. At this moment, the male protagonist is enveloped in silver aura head to toe. In just a single clash, he knocked away Devande, who had previously dominated him. This is the first time he has gained the upper hand since fighting against him. However, because of that attack, Devande was about to crash into the city wall. Fortunately, the principal immediately activated magic, using a massive water mirror to prevent Devande from breaking inside. Bystanders advised the principal to evacuate immediately, but her eyes remained fixed on the distance. At this moment, the male protagonist is extremely calm. Both sides exerted power at the same time and collided. The massive shockwave spread throughout the central capital. After noticing this, many people immediately guessed that the male protagonist was still fighting. Wignall and Lihana rushed over at the first moment. Julius, whose magic was exhausted, was unwilling to accept it, but had no choice but to follow. At this time, from the top of the tower, the Magia Wands also watched the male protagonist battle through the crystal. Every single one of them was shocked by his performance. Sion, who was knocked down, did not die. Looking at the male protagonist below, he couldn't believe her eyes. One must know that not long ago, the two were not even on the same level, yet now they are going toe-to-toe. Edward, who rushed over, was equally confused about this. Meanwhile, on the other side, the mages on the wall were all awed by the male protagonist's power. Many among them wanted to step forward to support him, but facing an enemy who can nullify magic, their intervention would only drag the male protagonist down. Realizing this, everyone fell silent. The one who broke the silence first was Sion. Just like that, led by Sion, everyone in the academy began to cheer on the male protagonist. Who would have thought that in a world where magic is supreme, everyone would be cheering for someone who cannot use magic? Seeing this scene, the male protagonist remembered. In reality, he had always been miserable and in pain, shunned and looked down upon by others. He had even harbored hatred toward this world. But deep down, he still longed for everyone's recognition. Everyone broke into a cold sweat in an instant. Without his sword, the male protagonist was simply no match for Devande. In the next second, he was blown away heavily by the opponent. Seeing this, Elfaria could no longer sit still, but was stopped by the wand of the Flame Emperor. Elfaria stated that she would not leave this room. She just wanted to look at the view outside the window. Just as the words fell, an ice sword created by the wand of the Ice Princess descended from the sky. The male protagonist below immediately sensed Elfaria's magic. With a knowing smile, he raised his hand and caught the ice sword. Once the dust settled, Sion recognized this as the method used to deal with the evil Grand Duke. However, everyone knew that magic was useless against Devande. No matter how strong the power, it couldn't possibly work. Devande roared, brandishing the mage killer as he charged at the male protagonist. Yet, the male protagonist did not panic at all, because he knew this magic sword could never be stopped by anything. As he swung his sword down unexpectedly, the mage killer in Devande's hands shattered instantly. In other words, the male protagonist's magic sword can ignore the rules of the mage killer. Seeing this, the instigator of the incident grew furious. He had never seen such a power that defies common sense. At this moment, everyone at the top of the tower, at the height of the Supreme Five Wands, sensed that this power was not magic, but the primeval sword of creation recorded in legend, which is the fifth element. The Light Emperor understands this power better than anyone. He realized that Finn had found the staff and sword of the Sorceress Queen's oath. Everyone present was stunned by the scene before them. because this power felt as if Elfaria was fighting side by side with the male protagonist. Seeing this, the headless man attacked once more. Countless teleportation circles appeared in the sky again, unleashing wave after wave of monsters. Yet Elfaria remained completely calm, because before her and the male protagonist, they are already invincible in this world. The male protagonist first thrusts his sword into the ground, followed by several magic circles appearing above his head. This move is one of Elfaria's 12 ice secret arts, the 7th spell, Ice Palace of 10,000 Frosts. At this moment, everyone feels an indescribable joy, especially Sion, who is directly crying tears of joy, truly worthy of being the only true female lead of this show. Besides that, standing on the roof is Finn. He didn't expect the male protagonist's strength to far exceed his predictions. This also made him realize that his promise with the Sorceress Queen seems hopeful to be fulfilled. No one could have expected that magicless boy whom everyone once looked down upon would now actually rely on just a single magic sword to enter the highest institution of the Magic Academy. Although his magic lacks even a bit of mana, he has not only given hope to countless compatriots, but also saved countless lives and rescued this country. This is a truly genuine and praiseworthy feat, and his magic also has a special name: courage. In other words, the male protagonist can finally enter the tower. Meeting Elfaria is now just a matter of time. It turns out that ever since the male protagonist defeated Devande, exhausted of power, he fell into a coma. In his dream, he recalled his first encounter with his roommate Rosti, but now they are separated by life and death. Meanwhile, the principal used magic to heal the male protagonist. At the same time, on the other side, Wagnus, whose chest had a huge hole, also woke up. Sarai reminds him that even with an immortal body, he should still value himself a bit more. Immediately after, Elisa also comes to visit Wagnus. She was the one who rescued him from the rooftop. From their conversation, it is revealed that Sarai, Wagnus, and Edward were teachers from the same period, while Elisa belongs to the new generation. However, all Wagnus cares about right now is the male protagonist. Fortunately, he learns that the protagonist was taken away by the principal, so there likely won't be any complications. Next, the scene shifts to the top of the tower. The casualties from this attack were around 3,000 people. The whereabouts of the perpetrator remain unknown. The Light Emperor plans to hand over the investigation to various factions. For now, their priority is still repairing the central capital. Furthermore, regarding the male protagonist, even though he was registered as a student, why was his presence unconfirmed for all 6 years? Iris states it was likely the principal's doing, with the goal of keeping the male protagonist hidden until he matured. Regarding her actions, the Light Emperor decides to entrust the sword to Fen for management. However, he will not interfere with the male protagonist's future path. The purpose of the Light Emperor summoning them here is to demand that they share intelligence regarding the attackers. However, after discussing it for a while, they realize there are virtually no clues at all. If anything, only the Light Emperor feels they carry the same aura as those destroyers from the Great War 10 years ago, the ones who once shook the magic world. Hearing this, the Staff of Thunder becomes excited. However, this attack is easily dodged by the Staff of Thunder, and now he no longer holds back. But just as he is about to move, the Light Emperor speaks up to stop it. He tells everyone that the most important thing right now is to prepare for the investigation. Meanwhile, Elfaria's deputy adjutant, who was secretly watching, is discovered by the staff of the Flame Emperor. Only then does everyone notice that among the Supreme 5 staffs, only Elfaria has not arrived. To this, the adjutant claims she couldn't attend today due to a stomachache. Next, the scene shifts to Rihanna's side. Colette approaches her carrying a bouquet of fresh flowers. This was prepared for Rosti. Although there is no tombstone yet, having this at least is better than nothing. Neither of them knew much about Rosti. They only knew he majored in the magic engineer curriculum and was rarely seen on campus. Moreover, he was reportedly a transfer student. Although being able to stay by the protagonist's side made Colette envious. When the male protagonist said he had made a very important friend, that smile on his face was genuinely real. Meanwhile, back at the central capital, everyone is doing their best to begin reconstruction. With the help of the dwarf race, the construction timeline has been greatly reduced. However, just as Finn is heading to the school, he is stopped by Iris. She intensely dislikes Finn. It seems they are old acquaintances. Finn is curious about why she called him over. Iris first grips the sword in her hand, then asks him not to take action against Will, the male lead. Once Finn gets involved, the clock's hand will advance significantly, making it difficult for him to stop his progress. Early morning sunlight spills into the male lead's dorm room. His hair has returned to its original color. He still doesn't understand what happened with that power back then. In his daze, he sees his roommate Rosti. If Rosti were still alive, perhaps he could answer a few questions. After freshening up, the male lead attends the graduation ceremony. The principal at the podium speaks endlessly about the Demon Queen's teachings. She reminds everyone present that the tragedy at the Boundary Festival is not over. It is likely just the beginning. Afterward, Edward begins handing out graduation certificates. One by one, certificates fly into everyone's hands. A total of 250 students in this graduating class have completed all courses. Following this, the list of students advancing to the tower is announced. First is Valenia with 12,000 total credits, Ignore with 11,980, 11,889 points, Julius with 11,802 points, Scion with 11,801 points, and Colette with 9,024 points. The remaining 49 students have earned enough credits required to ascend the tower. Everyone present understands that this list is inaccurate. Just as the male lead is repeatedly apologizing to Elfaria, the principal speaks up again. There is still one student who barely managed to complete the curriculum. Then the opening scene takes place. The next second, Professor Edward voices his objection, but the principal interrupts him directly. She knows some people will disapprove of this decision, but even so, please acknowledge his courage as that of a true mage. Let us give him a warm round of applause. However, the most awkward part is that right after her words, dead silence fills the room, and the person who breaks it by clapping first is Scion, truly deserving of being the show's real heroine. Led by Scion, the rest of the student body starts clapping for him as well. Amidst the applause, the male lead walks toward the principal to receive his emblem for ascending the tower. Edward, however, is furious. He doesn't want the male lead to follow in his footsteps. Thus, with everyone's approval, a total of 50 students earn the qualification to enter the tower. What the male lead doesn't know is that on a corner of the city wall, the resurrected Rosti is sitting right there. Meanwhile, Elfaria is sitting by the window, gazing below. She's have been waiting for a long time for Will. Just how cute is Elfaria, who is throwing a tantrum while crying and kicking? Simply because the recruitment letter she sent to the male lead was intercepted by the upper council, she's actually planning to freeze everyone into ice blocks. As early as 5 years ago, when Elfaria ascended into the tower, she made a promise with the male lead. No matter how weak he was, he had to enter the tower, because without him, nothing had any meaning. Now, the male lead has finally earned the qualification to enter the tower. After being promoted to senior instructors, everyone's outfit was changed. It's called the colorless uniform, extremely fitting, lightweight, and imbued with magic resistance. Although the Academy's cloaks were already excellent protective gear, the current outfits are clearly better. Everyone is thrilled about this, except for Julius, who looks utterly miserable and depressed. It turns out that long ago, Colette received an invitation from the Earth faction, Lihanna got one from the Lightning faction, and Wignall and Scion received invitations from the Fairy and Fire factions, respectively. Out of all these geniuses, Julius was the only one who received no news at all, which is why he feels so dejected. Meanwhile, the male lead is at Mr. Donan's forge. Since his previous sword broke during his duel with Devande, Mr. Donan forged a new one for him. This new sword pairs perfectly with the colorless uniform. Not only can it sever magic like before, but it can also amplify the magic power accumulated in its central gem. It is Mr. Donan's proudest masterpiece. However, this time he didn't charge a single cent because the male lead saved everyone during the border festival. He will also be entering the tower as the very first sword. Time quickly moves to the opening of the tower's ascension gate. 50 students gather at the base of the tower. After climbing the steps, everyone stands atop a magic circle. Syrah raises the magic wand in her hand, and the ceiling opens up. The platform beneath their feet floats upward. This place is known as the colorless city because even the castles float in the air, making the space here vast beyond imagination. Syrah explains that this floor is the first tier of the tower, serving as the foundation for living and production, supporting every aspect of the tower. Lihanna quickly notices that the sky and light here are actually advanced fairy illusion magic. Ignore is very familiar with this. Just then, Colette discovers there is even a crepe shop here. What a total foodie, Lihanna. Seeing everything around him, the male lead becomes extremely happy. However, Scion throws cold water on his mood, reminding him not to mistake the artificial sunlight here for real warmth. It is only then that he notices the eyes of the higher-tier mages around them seem a bit unusual. Julius also seems to have realized something. Guided by Syrah, everyone arrives at a special venue. Standing here is Croix, the head of the upper council, along with mages from various factions. Above them sit 4 of the Magia Vander, 5 supreme staves, the Ice Princess staff, the Lightning Empress staff, the Fairy Sacred staff, and the Flame Emperor staff. Next is the usual tradition, bestowing colors blessing on students who performed exceptionally well during their 6 years at the Academy. As soon as the words land, the colors of the students' outfits begin to change, taking on the color of their respective factions, and emblems appear on their brooches. However, the male lead's uniform undergoes no change at all, meaning no faction selected him. The scene cuts back to 1 day before the opening festival, but actually, it wasn't the adjutant's refusal, but rather people from the upper council who stepped in to block it. Specifically, it was the head of the upper council and leader of the uncolored faction, Cloys. They believed that allowing a sword to join the staves was beneath their dignity. Hearing this, Elfaria declared that if that's how it is, she'll just go up to the upper council herself and freeze everyone into popsicles. Naturally, that was absolutely forbidden. However, the adjutant had already reached an agreement with the other side. As long as the male protagonist, Will, can prove his strength during the opening festival, he can join the faction. After all, everything here is decided by power. Elfaria believes the protagonist will definitely be able to pull through this ordeal. Then the scene cuts back. At this moment, only 6 people on the field haven't been chosen yet, but they still have one last chance. As long as they showcase their true strength right here, they might be scouted on the spot. And this is the main event of the opening festival. With the signal to start, several monsters step out in front of them. Everyone needs to freely defeat them. Although the rule is very simple, several people quickly realize that magic has no effect on the monsters before them. It turns out this monster is the gatekeeper of the first stage. Its individual combat power alone is worth 30 credits, equivalent to monsters found in the deeper half of the middle floor. Normally, a newly graduated magia wielder wouldn't be able to defeat it. Its double-sided shields can reflect all magic back at them. However, for Julius, this isn't difficult at all. Casual about it, he casts the Art of White magic, and shatters 2 monsters in a single blow. Whether it's the Wind faction or the Dark faction, everyone can see that Julius already possesses the strength required to join them. If it weren't for the fact that he uses ice magic, members of other factions would be more than happy to accept a genius like him. However, besides him, there is another person worth paying attention to, the magicless protagonist. Right now, the protagonist is observing his opponent's movements. Once everything is ready, he warns Chi-Chi not to intervene, because he could already see Elfaria's plight from her expression. It was as if her look was saying, "I'm sorry I couldn't recruit you." So the protagonist decides to reach her side using his own 2 feet. He leaps into the air and slices the monster right in front of him, straight in half from above. His performance earns the deep respect of the top experts in the stands, because he is not only fast and hits hard, but he can also see through the enemy's movements in an extremely short time frame. Once he sees an attack, it becomes useless against him. Combined with the mobility provided by the Wii suit and the sword crafted by Mr. Donan, the protagonist currently feels completely unstoppable. After more monsters appear, Julius casts Poet of Thin Ice on them again. However, the shockwave from the massive ice crystal rushes straight out of the arena, heading toward the Ice Princess's wand. Seeing this, the protagonist leaps out and uses his magic sword to block it. The male lead never expected that after working so hard and giving his all to prove his worth, he would surprisingly receive invitations from 5 major factions. He thought he could finally return to his beloved side, but at this critical moment, someone raised a doubt. Cruz, the leader of the upper house, believes the magic he uses cannot truly be called magic. He states that the male lead was only granted special permission to enter the tower before due to his contributions in the Boundary Festival incident. As for whether he is qualified to join a faction, that's a whole different story. However, Elfaria disagrees and questions him directly. Didn't you see it? What he just released was clearly magic. Hearing this, Cruz replies that the male lead's attack merely borrowed magic used by someone else. This proves his true nature is not that of a mage, but a crude and wild warrior. If they tolerate someone like him in the tower, who knows how the public will criticize them? At this point, the staff of the Sacred Elf tells Cruz not to beat around the bush and to directly state what he means. It's simple, Cruz replies. If he truly has the qualities to be a staff, then he just needs to prove it to us. He then activates his magic and summons several monsters. These are magical creatures recently developed to suppress the dwarves, the ooze monsters. Cruz then proceeds to easily slay one using low-tier magic right in front of everyone. He explains that these monsters will disperse as long as they touch magic, but for someone without a shred of mana, defeating them is completely impossible. The male lead soon realizes this is indeed true. No matter how many times he swings his sword at the monster, it has no effect whatsoever. The staff of the Flame Emperor decides to observe a bit longer. After all, as one of the Supreme 5 staffs, the tower represents the pinnacle of the magic world. They cannot let a sword that cannot generate its own magic step any further. Although the male lead cannot sever the monster, he keeps searching for its core. As long as the core is destroyed, theoretically, he can defeat the opponent. However, in Cruz's eyes, this idea is quite naive. Since the monster can turn its body into slime, its core can also be converted into slime. What's even more deadly is that when the male lead stabs into the monster's body, he receives an electric shock. This is because it carries shock currents specifically used to suppress dwarves. Seeing the male lead struggle so hard, other mages plan to lend a hand. As long as their magic turns the male lead's sword into a magic sword again, he can defeat the opponent with ease. Unfortunately, before they can act, Cruz stops them. His reason is that this is no longer a public examination. It is now a trial for a heretical element. At the same time, Scion off to the side walks alone into a corner, thinking, "Hey you bastard, you're not just capable of this much, are you?" On the field, the male lead gets knocked back over and over again. After his nth failure, Cruz puts an end to the battle, as continuing would just be a waste of time. He proposes keeping the male lead's status as colorless. As for the power behind that magic sword that killed Devande, Cruz promises to unlock its secret himself, and he certainly has the strength to do so. The staff of the Flame Emperor agrees to this. After all, if they can unlock the 5th element and utilize it, he has no objection to whichever faction takes the male lead in. At this moment, Elfie is extremely angry because this completely contradicts what was previously agreed upon with Cruz. Just as tension reaches a boiling point, the Staff of Thunder finally finally speaks up. He states that the initiation festival will be held again anyway. Why talk so much nonsense? Just watch next time. Normally, the initiation festival is held once every 6 months. However, because various factions lost a lot of talent in the Boundary Festival, an exception is made this year to reopen it in just 1 week. Those who haven't received a blessing will just have to wait until next time. Hearing this, Cruz can't say much more. After everything concludes, the Supreme Five Staffs ascend into the sky once again. Elfaria looks back at the male lead, full of reluctance. After the opening festival ended, the main character began studying frantically to catch up on knowledge, seeing if he could find a new angle of approach. At this moment, those who had failed alongside him came over, wanting to invite the main character to join them in special dungeon training. Just as the main character was about to agree, he was interrupted by Julius. Julius stated that what the main character needs right now is not any of this at all. The top priority is to master the power of the demon sword, and he would assist the main character as well. The main character didn't expect Julius's attitude to change so quickly. Julius explained that after going through so much, just like Wignall and the others, both are now became comrades, because this way he can erase Elfaria's bad impression of him, and then he'll be able to join the Ice faction. Afterwards, the two of them arrived at a grassy plain, and Julius summoned the Ice Spirit Guardians. This is a very low-level monster, and all the main character needs to do is control his output strength properly. Julius believes that since the main character hasn't learned a single spell in these past 6 years, rather than learning existing magic on the fly, it's better to harness what he already possesses. In short, it's about teaching the main character magic stability. For example, if borrowed magic is at 100%, the main character needs to control it so he only uses 1% each day. As his control becomes more refined, the main character might even be able to stabilize his magic power for a lifetime. It's also the best solution available right now. Hearing this, the main character was instantly won over. Meanwhile, the male lead was still engaged in grueling training, but no matter how hard he tried to suppress his magical power, he could only suppress it by half. Exceeding this line, the magical power would vanish. Furthermore, after dispelling the magic sword, his stamina would suffer a massive drain. He suggested that it would be better to gain a deeper understanding of the magic sword first, as he still didn't know what this power truly was. However, Julius stated that he had already sent his clone to the Upper Academy's library, while also searching for the Light Clan who might know the inner details. It turned out that the current Julius could already remotely manipulate his white magic arts. The male lead couldn't understand why he would go to such lengths for him. The opponent stated that he was a mage of the Rayborg family and must reach the top with this identity, which was why he was using the male lead here. But even so, Julius's frankness still made the male lead feel that he was very gentle. He believed that everyone's gentleness was different. Colette's gentleness was always helping the male lead. Wagner's gentleness was scolding the male lead, and Scion had his own gentleness too. So even if it was a noble's duty, he still felt that Julius was both outstanding and gentle. These words made Julius think of someone. It turned out that when he was young, there was a maid named Anna by his side. One day, she had said the exact same words, that just like everyone else, she liked the gentle Julius. The girl's words had planted feelings deep in his heart, yet shortly after, Anna married someone else. At that time, Julius felt that everyone was a liar, and that being selfish and self-serving was more practical. From then on, he turned into someone who used others and mocked the weak. Meanwhile, inside Kreut's laboratory, he summoned his colorless companions, who appeared before Julius a moment later. Fortunately, Julius acted swiftly and immediately summoned an ice wall to defend himself. They were following orders from above to deal with the impudent fools causing trouble in the courtyard. After this, Kreutz would recommend several people to various factions. These people were all mages who had failed in the tower's competition, so as long as they were given a sliver of hope, they would want to climb up even if it meant casting aside their dignity. And this was the tragedy of the tower. At this time, Julius, in order to maintain the Guardian and Clone magic, had almost completely depleted his remaining magical power. Having calmed down, Julius chose another tactic. He openly mocked the few of them, saying how truly embarrassing they were today, and that he would rather die than become trash like them. To reach the top of the tower, he would use everyone. However, while Julius was saying these words, what surfaced in his mind was Anna. These words completely enraged the three people before him. The male lead says that he is the kind of idiot who falls in love with the other person once they treat him gently. At this moment, the male lead's smile seems those two doing. However, the opponents didn't give them much time to get cozy. Just as they were about to make a move, flames erupted all around them. A woman appeared above them, claiming to be Caliduin, the Iron Hammer Witch. Although the male lead was unfamiliar with this, Julius had heard rumors about it. This is one of the 7 wonders of the Magic Academy, belonging to the same academy as the excavator mechanism. Rumor has it that she snatches students away every night to use as experimental subjects. The opponent explains that she had never done such a thing. She merely picks out interesting students and trains and guides them, just like the 2 people in front of her. Without waiting for them to reply, she forcefully used magic to tie them both up and quickly fled the scene. A moment later, they arrived at a mysterious base. face. As Calidewin waved her wand, a lot of delicious food appeared around them. Eulis didn't dare to eat, but the male lead ate happily because Kiki told him the food wasn't poisoned. It turns out this was a secret hut secretly built by Sela, and Calidewin is actually her master. Yet Eulis still didn't trust the other person, even warning the male lead that this person might be an assassin from the upper house. Even if she isn't, he doesn't believe anyone would unselfishly guide two people for free. Hearing this, Calidewin smiled slightly, stating that if she wanted to deal with the two of them, she would have made a move long ago. Suddenly, large magic arrays appeared in the air between her raised hands. Without chanting or waving a magic wand, she possessed all attributes except for the light attribute. This also proved that she indeed had that kind of strength. But even so, Yuli still demanded that the opponent state her motive. Otherwise, she wouldn't let the other guide the male lead. Don't get me wrong, I'm the only one who can use you. I just can't bear to see my loved one snatched away by someone else, which is why I stood up to protest. I am absolutely positively not gentle at all. Faced with the interrogation, the witch had no choice but to come clean. It turned out she had some understanding of the magic sword. Her first reason for appearing was because she thought she might be able to help the male lead. As for the second reason, it was because of the upper house's movements. A certain faction wanted to use unfriendly methods to take the male lead away, and seeing this, the male lead immediately thought of Claus from the upper house. At this time, Claus was unusually furious because his subordinates had lost track of the male lead. The deputy chief officer was curious about why he had to go to such lengths, even fighting against the Ice Princess's staff, just to get the target. Claus stated that he didn't want to let good material go to waste, because magic swords should be utilized effectively. Just like this mentor assassin, even low-grade magical beasts could flexibly use mass-produced power. Then, incompetent magic instructors could also reach the top by relying on the power of armor. Even with the 5 strongest staves, dealing with the invaders from above would just be like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. What they should pursue is not a single supreme height, but the ultimate unified standard, allowing everyone to use the power of the magic sword. This is the supreme topic, meaning he is going to slice open the male lead's stomach. Right after that, right in front of the deputy, he dug out Calidewin's internal organs and vowed that the magic sword would be the next thing he dissects. The deputy knew that if Latia found out about this, the upper house would be ruined in an instant. Then the scene cuts back here. Calidewin added that Latia had also once asked favors of her, and this was her complete reason. After pondering for a moment, the male lead still decided to trust the witch in front of him. He didn't think the other person was lying, and furthermore, he had a lingering feeling that he had known this witch for a very long time. Since the male lead chose to trust the other person, Julius naturally had no reason to refuse. Watching the male lead and Julius bicker, Calidewin thought they would make a pretty good combination. Since matters are already settled, let's waste no more time. Let's take it off first. Never expected that young Elfaria was actually this cute. Just because the male lead felt sleepy while playing outside, Elfaria patted her thigh to sign for him to lay down. While the male lead was falling asleep, she looked around and made a bold decision. Rewinding back to a few days ago, to help the male lead recover his magical origin, the witch had him take off his clothes first. Julius thought he had some twisted hobby, but when he saw the male lead's body covered in scars, he was stunned too. Although he heard the male lead worked very hard to climb the tower, this was way too reckless, and what the witch needed to find was precisely this. Word has it that these scars were suffered by the male lead in his childhood to protect Elfie, and they are also the key to confirming the next keyhole/door. Next, the witch stated that she had actually observed the training between the two. Controlling a fixed amount of mana to wield a magic sword was indeed the right idea. She admitted that Julius is indeed very talented. However, as for the fixed procedure, the male lead has already accomplished it, because the male lead's body carries the blood of a grand mage. However, the male lead's body is a bit special. It cannot release mana outward, yet it can continuously store mana inside. No matter how agonizing it is for his physical body, it still swallows and stockpiles external mana. What the male lead needs to do is rely on himself to unleash this power. In other words, learn how to self-load. Besides loading, the male lead has previously activated another ability, so he needs to recall the magic stories tied to blood, tears, and memories. To put it simply, the power of recollection. The witch then activated her magic upon the scar on his back, using her mana to unlock the magic sword tale of former days. In an instant, all of the male lead's memories reappeared right before his eyes. When the male lead opened his eyes again, he found that his body had shrunk, and right in front of him stood Elfaria as a young girl. Fast forward to 4 days later, Julius didn't expect this sleep to last so long. He was very curious. Could remembering the past really unlock a new power? The witch did not give a direct answer, but told him that the magic sword was under Finn's jurisdiction and had nothing to do with her. Although she didn't deny Finn's methods, she believed there is more than one way to fight the invaders from above, because overall, history is buried inside the male lead's body, leaving behind the intertwined tracks of the staff and the sword. What he needs to do is follow those tracks back to the origin itself. If all goes smoothly, he might just find the origin itself. Then, the frame cuts to a set of photo frames. This is a tiny detail that the narrator will cover at the end. Meanwhile, on the male lead's side. Looking around, he realized this was his past, but no matter how powerful magic is, it cannot reverse time. So this magic must be presenting things that happened in the past. Just as he was pondering this problem, Elfaria pounced on him. Speaking of which, young Elfie was even more spoiled and headstrong back then than when she grew up. If the male lead wanted Elfie to forgive him, he had to give her a big hug and rub her head. After hugging Elfie tightly in his arms, the male lead felt that long-lost sensation again. Back then, he always comforted her this way. Afterwards, Elfie dragged the male lead to go fight monsters. The male lead thought Elfie was amazing, whereas he couldn't use any magic at all. The male lead didn't understand why he blurted out those words, but he quickly realized this was a memory. So he was instinctively repeating the things he had said in the past, meaning even though the male lead possessed his current consciousness, he couldn't change what had already happened in the past. Elfie pulled out her magic wand to indicate it was okay, because she brought their favorite book along. As long as they had this, they would have endless courage. The male lead used to be weak and timid, and Elfie would always protect him like that. But he couldn't remember when Elfie started depending on him. Hand in hand, the two of them walked deep into the forest. Elfie suggested taking a brief rest, then used magic to create a sweet candy bean. This was the second secret method of her 12 ice arts, a gentle magic simply used to make crystal ice candy. The male lead wondered why Elfie was always giving him so much candy. She explained that the male lead was always sharing his food with the other kids at the orphanage, and besides, if Will eats a lot of it, then Will's inside will be completely full of me, right? Yeah, I guess so. Afterwards, Elfie began telling a story to the male lead, but when she looked at him again, she noticed he had already started nodding off. Seeing this, Elfie patted her lap, signaling for him to lie down, leading to the opening scene. Because the male lead was experiencing this from a third-person perspective, he was able to see the scene Elfie made earlier. Then the atmosphere took a sharp turn. The two heard that because of the war taking place in the central capital, scary monsters had escaped to this area. Elfaria wanted to do was eradicate these monsters. Meanwhile, the male lead finally remembered that he and Elfaria had indeed been to this place before. However, he still had no memory of what happened afterward. Just at that moment, a monster suddenly charged out. Fortunately, right before impact, Elfaria held the male lead and dodged out of the way. Without anyone noticing, the monster's body was pierced through by a massive crystal. Based on his experience now, the male lead can tell this isn't an actual monster. It's a magical construct weapon created by a mage. Judging by the wounds on its body, it clearly escaped from the battlefield. Seeing this, Elfaria immediately shielded the male lead behind her. She decided to use an awesome spell she came up with, Ars Weiss, White Art, to gang up with multiple clones of herself and beat the monsters senseless. The male lead recognizes this as magic reflection, which happens to be the special characteristic of this magical construct weapon. He yells for Elfaria to run immediately. However, Elfaria firmly refuses at this moment because she swore to protect him no matter what. Paralyzed by fear, the male lead finds himself unable to move. Deep inside, he relentlessly pushes himself. Isn't being protected by Elfaria the thing you hate the most? Ultimately, his willpower overcomes his physical fear. Just as the monster reflects the attack once more, he leaps forward to block it. That's right, that is how the male lead got the scar on his back. Seeing him gravely injured, Elfaria bursts into tears, continuously pleading with him not to die. The male lead remembers that he indeed passed out at that moment. But if that was the case, who ended up saving Elfaria in the end? As his consciousness gradually fades away, the voice of a witch echoes in his mind. Awake. Instantly, the male lead feels his body burning up. His flesh feels as if it's on fire, like his whole body is about to explode. In that very moment, his body turns into a sword. He realizes this place is the origin of the magic sword. Using the ice crystal magic that had just struck him, he loads the magic sword. This is how the very first ice-type magic sword was born. He also finally understands why back then he felt that particular magic sword was unstoppable, because he knew that a magic sword created through Elfaria's magic is omnipotent. He originally planned to slice the enemy down with a single strike, but the monster in front of him actually manages to catch the blade with its bare hand. The male lead never expected that after finally doing everything he could to reach his lover's side, and thinking he could finally get affectionate with Elfaria, an unexpected intruder would crash the party halfway through. Not only that, but seeing the two trying to steal Will away, Colette also wanted to fight for him, to the point where she was even drooling. It turns out that just moments ago, Elfaria was still alone in the tower holding a plushie of the male lead. She recalled what Colette had once said to her. If the Ice Princess's wand hadn't cast magic on the male lead, he wouldn't have been so exhausted. Elfaria felt deeply guilty about this. At this moment, the male lead speaks to Elfaria across space, stating that he holds no resentment towards her at all. Rather, it was because he was weak that Elfaria was left so lonely. Precisely because the male lead said this, Elfaria made up her mind to endure it all, staying in the tower without breaking her promise. Throughout these 6 years, Elfaria actually helped him a lot in secret. While the male lead was looking for the source of magic, Wignall and the others were extremely worried about him. At that moment, Lihana suddenly collapsed, claiming she was just exhausted from recent training. Then the scene shifts to the day of the second opening festival. The 4 candidates who failed alongside the male lead received invitations from different factions, but in reality, they were not qualified enough. If not for the border festival causing a shortage of personnel, the current selection standards wouldn't be this low. Time quickly reached its end, yet Julius and the male lead had still not fallen. If it dragged on any longer, they would lose their eligibility. Cruz added fuel to the fire, claiming that waiting any longer would be a waste of time, and that they must have run away because they couldn't come up with a strategy. However, right as he finished speaking, the two pushed open the main door and barged in. But in Cruz's eyes, this was nothing more than a futile struggle. The test for the male lead this time remained the same as before. Although the male lead had already found the power of his source, Julius was still very worried, because ever since the male lead woke up, there had been no chance to confirm whether he had truly mastered the magic sword. So Julius decided to secretly lend him some mana. However, right at that moment, a magic circle appeared beneath his feet. After receiving the blessing, Julius warned the male lead not to let his efforts go to waste. To this, the male lead expressed that he would rely on his own strength to reach Elfaria's side. He recalled everything from the past. As long as he could recall, he could fill in the fragments of his memories. With a single swing, the male lead directly slashed through the monster in front of him. Everyone could tell that. Although this move was not as powerful as externally loaded magic, it still surpassed intermediate magic. Even the Supreme 5 Wands marveled at such power. Just as the witch was feeling gratified by this, Finn walked up from behind. The witch in front of them was actually the principal of the Magic Academy. From their conversation, we also learned that the gem on the male lead's sword was originally given by Finn to Mr. Donnan of the Dwarf clan. The male lead's power continues to develop. He is now capable of loading on his own, but the amplification of his mana still needs improvement. With this sword, he can make up for his shortcomings in this area. Using the demon sword came at too high a price for the young male protagonist, causing his hair to turn white and making him lose his memories. After 6 years of training at the academy, she can finally teach him some techniques now. Seeing this scene, Kratz completely lost his composure. How is this possible? This can't be. Even members of other factions could tell that this power was definitely not something the dwarf race could pull off. Shortly after, the sword in the male protagonist's hand returned to its original form. Since it was loaded using his own power, it consumed significantly more energy. Although the male lead performed remarkably well, Kratz still refused to acknowledge it as magic. What kind of magister are we if we ignore unexplained phenomena without investigating? What if that sword is also a magical tool? Equipment other than wands is forbidden during the opening ceremony, and the male lead himself must be thoroughly investigated. Hearing this, the leaders of various factions began to hesitate. In this situation, only the Magia Vander 5 Supreme Wands could make a final judgment. However, Elfaria and the male lead are practically like husband and wife, so her opinion would only be seen as favoritism. Her adjutant knew she needed to find an ally before Elfaria snapped. Just then, Zeon, the Wand of Thunder, stepped out. He said confirming whether the male lead was a wand was simple. He just needed to withstand one hit from him. Roar, thunder! As the saying goes, where there's smoke, there's no injury. Now the male protagonist stands firmly in the center of the field, and he has even loaded his demon sword with lightning power. Everyone was baffled by what happened. Only Finn realized that the male lead had just swallowed the magic, taking the lightning hit while reducing the power of the load by half. Because the current male lead cannot achieve complete absorption, his body was still burned by Cyan's attack. Seeing the male lead's performance, Cyan burst into wild laughter, declaring that since the boy took a hit from a supreme wand and remained standing unharmed, there was no stronger proof needed. Nevertheless, Kratz still wanted to stop this. Although Kratz is a faction leader in the Upper Academy, he couldn't stand up to a single blow from the Wand of Thunder at all. He had no choice but to acknowledge the male lead's strength, meaning the male lead finally passed the faction evaluation. Seeing this, Elfaria excitedly jumped into the male lead's arms. Serena had already guessed which faction the male lead would choose, but she still asked for his opinion as a matter of routine. However, to everyone's regret, Zeon snatched the male lead away and warned others that this guy now belonged to him. This completely enraged Elfaria, leading straight to the scene at the beginning. Seeing this, Colette also wanted the Earth faction to recruit him. She was even drooling. The scene then cuts back to the main stage. Elfaria demands to know what Zeon is playing at, as he had never shown any interest in recruiting the male lead before. Zeon replied that he wants him now, whether it's fine wine, treasure, or a brat. If he wants it, he'll take it. Initially, the onlookers wanted to mediate between the two, but the staff of the Flame Emperor believes trying to mediate is pointless. It's just stalling for time. Meanwhile, the staff of the Fairy Saint is more than happy to sit back and enjoy the show. After Elfaria hands the male lead over to her adjutant, a colossal aura radiates from her. With no signal to start, the fight instantly erupts. Elfaria strikes first, raising her staff to trigger her magic. The male lead once used this exact magic to instantly wipe out hordes of demons, now cast by Elfaria herself. Its sheer power is on an entirely different level. No one expected Elfaria to open up with her ultimate move right out of the gate. But what caught everyone even more off guard was that the staff of Thunder Lord dodged the hit completely unscathed and instantly flashed right behind Elfaria. Just as the staff of Thunderlord was about to gloat, over a dozen Elfarias appeared all around him. That's right, this is her signature clone magic. At the very start, when the temple was cast and visibility was obscured, Elfaria used her Art of Self. Rumor has it her casting speed is second to none, even within this tower. On top of that, among the five, she's the most ruthless when dealing with enemies. Dozens of Elfaria clones simultaneously unleash Forest of Frost Iron upon Xion. Hundreds of magic circles rain down ice crystals like a violent storm. This is high-tier, chantless magic. In an instant, she cast the same spell that Julius struggled immensely to pull off on the 11th floor. In the eyes of these young prodigies, the power of these two has reached a level beyond comprehension. High-level spells are being thrown around as if they cost nothing. But unfortunately, Xion is a complete monster too. Elfaria's barrage of ice magic didn't scratch him in the slightest. Instantly teleporting in front of a clone, he slams his right hand onto her head. Unexpectedly, this one turns into shattered ice just like the clones. It turns out Elfaria's real body was positioned higher up all along. All her attacks so far were just to cover her main body's escape to that high ground, setting up a decisive winning blow. She even created clones so convincing that even the high five staves couldn't tell them apart. Standing like a goddess of ice and snow, Elfaria points down at Xion. "Did you have fun playing with my puppets?" The moment she finishes speaking, all the magic circles embedded inside her clones activate at once. However, once the smoke clears, Xion is still standing right there. But this time, he summons his own staff, meaning Xion is finally getting serious. He hurls his staff straight at Elfaria. As she dodges, nobody expected Xion to instantly teleport right alongside it. A single lightning-infused punch knocks Elfaria straight out of the sky. Before Elfaria can even regain her footing, Xion's follow-up attack is already upon her. This strike hits so hard it makes Elfaria cough up blood, and the ice temple she summoned earlier completely shatters. In terms of raw speed, she is far behind Xion. Xion is clearly a mage, yet he's fighting like a close-quarters brawler. Lihanna points out what makes him different. Xion is simply letting his magic power overflow rawly. At the same time, this represents the absolute highest realm pursued by the entire Thunder faction. No chance needed, relying purely on overflowing mana to leave everything in his dust. To Xion, that was just basic movement. People reverently call that divine technique Thunderbolt. His speed actually surpasses Elfaria's magic itself. Right then, Xion begins chanting a spell, and the staff in his hand transforms into a massive battle hammer. Seeing this, Elfaria summons Countess Ice Walls, but it's like trying to stop a runaway train with a twig. The principal asks Finn who he thinks will win. Finn states without hesitation that it'll be Xion. If Elfaria, who created 12 magic arts, is a genius of theory and creation, then Xion is an absolute prodigy of actual combat. Even though Elfaria can summon many clones, in Xion's eyes, she's merely buying time. Now, Elfaria can only hit and run while riding her staff. Although she created many opportunities using her clones, she has failed to land any real, substantial damage on him. The depth Xion reached in the labyrinth is second only to the Light Emperor's 48th floor. He is, in every sense, a warrior specialized purely for real combat. Despite being a staff, Xion leans heavily toward fighting like a sword. Furthermore, Finn hopes the male lead will join his faction, as that's the only place where he'll truly have room to grow. However, the staff of the Fairy Saint is visibly displeased with this assessment. Having previously lost to the staff of the Ice Princess, her current feelings are extremely complicated. She doesn't want Elfaria to win, but she doesn't want her to lose either. The scene cuts back to the main arena. Elfaria is sent flying once again by a massive blow. From her appearance, she has taken severe injuries. Seeing this, Julius grabs the unconscious male lead and shakes him. "Wake up already. If this keeps up, Lady Elfaria is going to lose. Only your voice can cheer her on and give her strength." Although the male lead doesn't wake up, Elfaria catches sight of the goggles he left behind. Seeing this, Xion taunts, "I'll be taking your sword then." Before he can even finish his sentence, an ice spell strikes. Xion dodges barely in time, leaving a slice across his cheek. Just like the male lead, Elfaria refuses to back down or admit defeat. Looking at Elfie, she spoke with absolute certainty. "I will never hand over my will to you." Elfie said that because the male lead protected her and desperately caught up to her, he has been fulfilling the promise made with her from start to finish. So this time, it's her turn. Xion's lightning speed is comparable to divine speed. The electric current spreading through his body not only boosts his movement speed, but also greatly enhances his reaction speed. Elfie knows this, but if she freezes the accelerated lightning along with every everything else, that might not be the case. So, as Zeon charged forward, Elfie immediately cast the absolute zero boundary from the 12 ice arts, freezing Zeon in an instant. It turns out Elfie's trump card has extremely harsh activation conditions. She needs to release 50% of her magic power within the range to form this frost and snow boundary. That's why that series of high-tier spells was all set up. Knowing she would be cornered, she laid down the ultimate trap in advance. The staff of the sacred elf previously was trapped by this exact magic. Elfie recalled that this magic was originally created to capture the easily embarrassed male lead and hold him tight. But since she's using it now, Will is my husband. As she made her confession, Zeon's body was blown away like a cannonball, shaken awake by Julius. The male lead also woke up at this moment. But surprisingly, the injured Zeon actually began chanting to break through this frost and snow boundary that can freeze even magic. He just needs to unleash firepower greater than the boundary itself. Although this is theoretically true, succeeding would definitely affect many people. So the staff of the sacred elf immediately had her vice commander retreat while she stayed behind to watch. At this moment, a dark cloud and lightning surged around Zeo. Everyone quickly guessed that this was a supreme tier spell, even stronger than high tier magic. Of course, Elfie didn't show any weakness either. After Zeon began his chant, Elfie started chanting as well. She also intended to counterattack with supreme tier magic. Although both were chanting incantations simultaneously, neither stopped their physical attacks. Elfie's clones were continuously shattered by Zeon, but she never stopped chanting. Julius recognized this as a succession chant, where clones pass on the incantation to continue chanting. The newly awakened male lead was completely stunned by this scene. As both of their chants reached their climax, a massive bull demon king appeared behind Zeon. Similarly, behind Elfie, an iceberg made of crystal appeared. Raging Heroes Falling Thunderbolt / Spreading Wings, the guardian of the Frozen Gardens iceberg. Because the Ice Princess and the Thunder Duke exhausted all their power to use supreme tier magic, it caused the magic city below to shake violently. Edward and Werkner deduced that this was triggered by the 5 supreme wands. The scene cuts back to the top of the tower. Both individuals trapped in the explosion's vortex were heavily injured. Neither expected the other to possess the strength to fight to a mutual destruction. With their magic power nearly depleted, surrender isn't in either of their dictionaries, so they prepare to get up and keep fighting. At that moment, the Flame Emperor and the Fairy Saint step in. The Light Emperor has already appeared in the sky above. He does not allow infighting among the 5 supreme wands. However, neither the Ice Princess nor the Thunder Duke intends to obey his orders. This completely stuns everyone present. However, the Light Emperor's decision cannot be argued with. He further states that if they want to decide another way, the male lead will have to be taken under his faction. After 299 tie rounds, Zeon finally wins against Elfaria. At this moment, Elfaria is truly crying a river. Just like that, Elfaria is forcibly dragged away from the venue by her adjutant. In reality, how could the male lead not want to cry as well? After winning, Zeon teases him, "Didn't expect you to be so sensible. I thought you were going to go wild like a beast." The male lead states that if he acts recklessly, Elfaria will end up fighting others again and getting hurt. Therefore, he demands that Zeon never fight Elfaria again. Otherwise, he will beat Zeon up and then go to Elfaria's side. The male lead's bold attitude earns the Thunder Duke's appreciation, who promptly bestows upon him a colored blessing. From this moment on, the male lead belongs to the Thunder faction. Afterward, all the mages of the same year hold a celebration party. The male lead notices that Linana seems very tired every day. Lihana says the male lead will understand soon enough. Nearby, Julius mentions that it's all because of the male lead that he suffered a lot, since everyone in their ice faction has to spend every day comforting Elfaria non-stop. Hearing this, the male lead can only keep apologizing. Nevertheless, Julius gives the male lead's goggles back to him. Seeing this scene, Colette feels a bit jealous, wondering when the relationship between the two became so good. At that moment, a classmate invites the male lead to join the party. After he leaves, Colette falls into deep thought. Just as Emma said before, she can no longer have the male lead all to herself. Before, the male lead only had Colette, but now he has so many friends. Hearing this, Wignall and Lahana comfort her. Over at the party, the male lead notices Sion upstairs and thanks him for his help during the Boundary Festival and graduation ceremony. However, Sion suggests that as a thank you gift, they should have a duel right now. Before the male lead can answer, Sion summons his Firebird. Seeing this, Julius also summons his Icebirds. Just at this moment, Colette comes looking for him. The principal asks Iris why she didn't go to find the male lead. She explains that she cannot let him discover her true identity. However, Finn points out that if she clings to the role of a junior classmate, the male lead might get stolen away by other girls. Iris tells Finn not to meddle in her business, adding that the male lead now belongs to the tower, so she asks Finn not to take him away again. Finn replies that he will respect the principal's wishes and observe the male lead for a while longer, but if things don't go smoothly, he will take him away without hesitation. Meanwhile, at the party, Teacher Werkner rushes in after hearing the news. He scolds everyone, saying that now that they are in the tower, they should have the self-awareness of high-tier mages. Normally, he would give them a severe lecture, but as their teacher, he simply advises them not to slack off. Afterwards, he asks to speak with the male lead privately. After catching up, the male lead suddenly asks Werkner if there is any way to see Elfaria, as he wants to see her no matter what. Unbeknownst to him, this is the exact reason Werkner came looking for him. Werkner then has the male lead change clothes and sneak out of the tower. Werkner will pick him up at 12 o'clock, telling him not to leave any regrets before then. Although the male protagonist really wants to be with her, he wonders if it's truly right to treat this place as the final destination. Their promise was to become Magia Vander together and watch the sunrise side by side. Right now, he isn't able to stand beside Elfaria as an equal, which means he needs to grow much stronger. Even so, Elfaria still wants to stay by his side. At this point, Elfaria realizes that Will has recovered part of his memories. However, he still doesn't have a clue about the rest. Nevertheless, he will continue searching for the treasure that lies between him and Elfaria. Elfaria then suggests going up to sneak a glance at the sky, summoning countless ice stairs with her magic. Throughout the journey, Will carries Elfaria on his back. Both of them are well aware that the sky before them is an illusion. Hidden above are countless invaders, making the vow they swore likely the most difficult promise in the world to keep. This year, all the new inductees of the tower were gathered in a single classroom for a meeting. Once everyone arrived, Sarah came forward to guide them. Normally, everyone would gather inside the tower, but this year's new recruits were given a top-secret mission to uncover the background and details of their respective factions. They are required to record any suspicious conversations or behaviors among all members. The reason for this order is that during the previous boundary incident, internal staff within the tower were found conspiring with external enemies. This means the traitor is lurking right inside the tower, possibly one of the Magia Vander or another high-ranking magus. Since Will and his group have just arrived at the tower, they are completely above suspicion, making them the most suitable candidates to handle this mission. That wraps up Season 2. However, the production decision for Season 3 has already been officially announced. Let's wait and see how the story unfolds. Remember to like and subscribe.